Hey guys, and welcome to another one of my tutorials. So in this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to set up this little menu system here. So it works very similarly to BioShock Infinite's menu system. So you can see if I select options here, it's going to bring me to a different section of the map that has a totally different widget that I can interact with. So right now I just have a back button on it. I didn't actually bother setting up options because I figured, that's not really important for this tutorial. But this is just a widget like any other widget. So you could add options here to change the volume or whatever you want, just like you normally would. And so you can go back and that will bring you back to like the main menu widget. And then we can go credits, for example, and it'll bring me up here. And so you can basically put these little widgets wherever you want on the map. And it's really easy to add new ones or move them around or adjust them once you have the whole system set up. And then if we come back here, so exit obviously just exits the game, and play game will jump you into like a new level. So for this project, I'm just using the first person template level as an example, but you can load up any level you want. And then one other thing I want to mention before we get started is, so this map that you see right here, you totally do not need this map to follow along with the tutorial. The only reason I'm using it is because it looks nice, and I just wanted to have something to look nice in the tutorial. But you can use any map you want. The system will work the same no matter what map you're on. But if you are curious about which map it is, if you go to the marketplace, it's this modular seaside town. And I got this when it was free. It might not be free anymore, but if you want to use it, that's the one that it is. And okay, so now we can go ahead and jump into it. So over here, I have a totally fresh project. So this is actually using the first person template, and all I've done is I've imported in that seaside map. So you can see here in the content folder, I have the normal first person template stuff, and then I have the seaside town. And then inside of maps, I've opened up the demonstration map. But again, you don't need this map to follow along with this tutorial at all. Okay, so with that being said, we can go ahead and start. So the first thing you'll notice, well, if you press play, it's going to drop us in as our first-person character, which we don't want. So we need to fix that. So before we start creating blueprints, I'm going to add a new folder here. So right-click and say new folder, and we will call this 3D underscore menu. So everything we're going to be doing in this tutorial is going to be inside of this folder, just to keep things a little bit organized. So in order to fix that issue, we want to add a new game mode. So right-click, and go to Blueprint class and select Game Mode Base. And then we will call this the main menu game mode because this area right here, even though it's a level, it's still our main menu. And then inside of here, we actually don't need to change anything because all the defaults are fine. We just need to come over here and set this to use our game mode base like so. And now if we save all and then we run it, saving takes a second on this map because it's kind of large. And then I hit play. You can see now we spawn as this camera, which we can fly around. And that's totally fine because we're not spawning as the player anymore. And eventually, once we add in the widgets, you won't be able to fly around either. So this is basically what it should look like. And you also want to make sure that you have a player start in your level, which I currently don't. So we're going to come over here on the left and drag in a player start. So the player start is basically where the camera is going to start when you press play. So let me drag my other project over here because I didn't actually show you that before. So you can see my player start is located, it's located like right here. So even no matter where I am in the camera, as long as I have it to default player start and I press play, you'll see the camera is going to go here and it's going to interpolate down to this camera. So I press play, and then I spawn at the player start and I go down to the camera. So that's kind of what it will look like when the game first launches. So it kind of does matter where you put this player start. So I'm just going to throw it somewhere over here for right now, but feel free to put it wherever you want your camera to start. Okay, so we have that. The next thing we need to do is create our actor widgets that will represent the different menus around the world. So we can right click and make a new blueprint class, and we want it to be of type actor. We will just call this BP underscore menu 3D. And then let's go ahead and open this guy up. So this needs to consist of two things. It needs to have a camera and it needs to have a widget. So up here at the top left, let's add camera component like so. And then I'm just going to go ahead and drag this back a little bit. It doesn't really matter where you put this right now because we'll be changing it per widget. But as a default, it's nice to have it kind of back a little bit. And then again, so let's come up here and select default scene root and then hit add component and add a widget component like so. Okay, and that's pretty much all we need to do for right now. We're going to have to come back and fill this out later once we create our widget. So let's go ahead and actually create our widgets now. So let's come back here to the content folder, and then inside of here, I'm going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it widgets. So this is where we're going to put all of our widgets. And then inside of here, we want to right click, add a user interface, widget blueprint. And the first one we want to add is our base class for all of our menu widgets. So each menu widget, whether it's the credits, the options, or whatever, they're all going to inherit from this class, so that way they can share some of this functionality. And so we will call this the menu 3D widget. And this is going to be the base class. So let's open this guy up real quick because it's going to be actually really simple to fill out. So the only two things we need to do inside of here is we need to come over here to the graph tab, and then at the top, we need to go to class settings, or maybe it's class defaults, or maybe it doesn't exist for this. No, it does. Yeah, so under class settings, we need to hit this little drop down button that I just hit, and we want to select generate abstract class. And the reason we're doing that is because, well, this is an abstract class, meaning that it's not going to be something we're going to directly spawn into the world. We're actually going to be spawning only children of it. So because of that, we can make it an abstract class. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to add an event dispatcher. So hit this little plus button on the event dispatcher, and we will call this transition to linked map, or not map, menu. So this will kind of make more sense once we actually use it, but what this is going to be used for is whenever you select an option, so let's say you select the credits button, it's going to call this event, or it's going to dispatch this event, and it's going to tell the, I think it's the level blueprint, that we want to transition to this other menu, right? And since it's in the base class, everybody will be able to use it. And again, it will start to make sense more once we actually start using it. So for now, this is all we need to do. Well, actually, that's all we need to do for this blueprint for the rest of the project. So we can just go ahead and close this. And then we can come back here to the content folder. And then off of this guy, we want to create our child widgets. So in the little example project, I had three. I had a main menu, and I had an options, and I had a credit. So let's go ahead and create those three. And if you want to create more, this is basically exactly how you would do it. So for some reason, you can't right click on these and say create child widget like you can for normal blueprints. So we will just have to do this the long way. So let's right click and say user interface, make a new widget blueprint. And we will call this the main menu widget. And then we need to open this up, and we need to go to the graph, and then we need to go to class settings, and we need to change the parent class to our BP underscore, or sorry, to our menu 3D widget, which is the one we just created. So now it is actually a menu 3D widget. And then we can browse back here. And so we can just duplicate this one two more times for the other two that we need. So we can say right click, duplicate. We'll call it the options menu, or sorry, options widget. And then we'll duplicate that one. And we will call it the credits widget. And again, you can make as many of these as you want. I'm just going to stick with these three for right now. And then one other widget we're going to need is a widget for our buttons, because I kind of have customized buttons just so it matches the scenery a little bit better. So let's right click, go to user interface, make a new widget blueprint, and we will call this the button underscore widget. Okay, so I'm going to just file save all real quick, and then we'll keep going. All right, so let's start with the main menu widget and the button first. So actually, yeah, so let's do the button first. So over here, let's open up the button widget. This will be pretty quick. It's a pretty simple widget here. So on the designer tab up here, we want to add a button. So drag this guy in, and then we want to select the button, and then we want to, over here on the right, we want to set it to, oh wait, we don't want this canvas panel. That's why it's looking weird. So hold on, delete the button, and then delete this canvas panel, and then drag the button in. And then select the button, and then over here on the left, up here, we want to add also a text to it, like so. And then let's select this text and then make it a variable by clicking this little checkbox. and we will call this the button text. Okay, so obviously this isn't quite right yet. So select button up here. And the first thing we want to do is we want to find the background color, and we want to set the alpha to 0. So that is transparent. And then we want to change the color and opacity. And you can see if you drag this around, it actually changes the color of the text. So we want to make this some brownish color. So I'm just going to copy what I have on my other project. So for the red, I have 0.37, and the green, I have 0.16, and 0 for the blue. So it's kind of like a brown color for the button. And then I think that's all we need there. Yes. So now over here on the graph tab, we need to hook up a few things. So we want this button to be reusable. And so to do that, we need to expose a couple things. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these two because we don't need them. So over here on the left, let's create a new variable and call it the text. And we will make it of type text. And then we'll select instant editable, blueprint read only, expose on spawn, and private. And by selecting all these, well, by selecting instance editable, we make it so that we can actually set it in the details panel in the widget, and you'll see that here in a minute. And then expose on spawn is, well, if you ever spawn it through blueprints, we probably don't actually need this one. And then blueprint read only because it's constant basically, and then private because obviously we don't want anybody else to change it outside of our class. So let's actually use this. So let's drag this in, and we want to assign our button text to be that text. So we'll drag in our button text and say set, and then we will, oops, not like that. Drag in our button text and say set text, like so. And then of course the text we want to set it to is this text. I'll save. And so now the next thing we want to do is we want to set up the hovered state so that when it's hovered, the background changes, because you'll notice in my other project here, if I just run this real quick, you'll see when I hover over the text, the background changes to like a darker color. So in order to do that, we can select the button, and then we can come down here and say on hovered and hit this. And then we also want one for on unhovered. So select the button again and say on unhovered. So these events will get called obviously when the button is hovered and when it's done being hovered. And so we want to change the color of the button. So we can drag in the button, or the background of the button rather. And so we can say set background color. And we want to set it to some color. So I'm going to make this a variable as well so that we can configure it per button. So I'm just going to right click and say promote to variable. And then just like we did for the text, we want to set this to instance editable, blueprint read only, and private. And then I'm going to call this the upper color. And so when the button is hovered, we set it to the hovered color. And then when it's unhovered, we want to set it to invisible again. So we can, I'm just going to copy these two nodes. And then for this, I'm just going to say 0, 0, 0, and then I'm also going to pass in 0 for the alpha, like so. So it should look transparent. And then for the hover color, we can also default this to something nice. So let's open this up. And again, I'm just going to copy what I have in my other project. So I used 0.37, 0.16, and then 0. And then for the alpha, I used 0.35. And we can hit OK. All right. And then the very last thing we want to do in here is we want to add a click event so that we can kind of pass up the chain of events whenever we are clicked. So we'll say button, and then we'll override the on clicked event. And then we will create our own event dispatcher. So we'll come over here and create an event dispatcher and call it on clicked. And then we will just go ahead and call it like so. So whenever the button is clicked, this event will get dispatched. Okay, so now that we have this button set up, we can actually start using it, and it'll just make our lives a lot easier because we won't have to copy and paste all this code. So we can come back to our main menu widget, and then let's go over to the designer tab and start setting this up. So we can delete this canvas panel because we don't need that. And we can add a border. And then for the screen size, or sorry, for the thing up here at the top list, we want to change this to custom so that we can view it at a custom size. And we're going to use 200 by 300, because that's about the size that we want. And then inside of this border, we will add a vertical box because we basically just want to lay out all of our buttons. Oh, and let's change the color of this border. So select the border, and then for the brush color, we want to select, again, I'm just going to copy what I had before. So I used one red, 0.69 on the green, and 0.32 on blue to give it like a tan looking color. And we hit OK. All right, so the vertical box, we want to add our buttons to it. So since we've created that button widget, we can just come up here and search for button, and make sure you get the button widget and not the button, because this is the built-in one for Unreal. And so we can just drag this onto our vertical box like so. And then all we have to do is fill out the text, what we want to say. So we'll say play game. And just like that, it fills out our text and it's the correct color. And it looked good. And this hover text, if you change this, it won't actually do anything right now, but it will change the color of what the background changes to whenever you hover over it. So you can change this as well if you like, but I'm just going to leave it as how we have it set by default. And then after this, we want to add a little spacer so that we can have a little bit of space. So let's drag that onto the vertical box as well. And then for the spacer, let's just set the Y value to like 10. And then from there, we basically just want to copy this. Oh, actually, the vertical box, let's add a little bit of padding to it as well. So let's add like maybe 20, 30, I don't know, 20 to the top and 20 to the bottom. And then we can take this button widget and we can duplicate it. So we'll right click and say duplicate it. And let's be naming these as well. So let's actually call this one the play game button. And we will call this one the options button. And then let's duplicate this spacer as well. So we go button, spacer, button, spacer. And then for the options button, let's just rename it to, or not rename it, but change the text to options. And then again, we will duplicate this and duplicate the spacer. And we will call this one the credits button. And then we'll call this credits. And then finally, we want one more for exiting. So we will duplicate this. We will call this the exit button. And then we will duplicate the spacer. Oops. Duplicate the spacer. Actually, I guess we don't really need a spacer because it's at the end. So maybe we can just delete that one. And we'll just call this exit game. And yeah, exit, credits, options, and play. Okay, so that looks good. You can tweak it, obviously, to meet your likings if you want, but this is good for now. And so now that we have each one of these, we want to bind to them so that when they're clicked, it actually does something. But I guess before we do that, let's go ahead and set up our scene a little bit, because we can actually kind of start doing that now. All right, so let's come over here. And this is where I added the main menu to this little like thing where it kind of looks like maybe there's supposed to be a sign hanging here. So to do this, what we want to do is we want to open up, or we want to drag in our BP menu 3D. And you can just drag it into the world anywhere, it doesn't really matter. And then you want to rotate it so that the camera is facing the direction of the sign. And then I'm going to hit this little button up here so it changes the movement to local space. And then you kind of scoot it back. I kind of had it on the right. But basically what we want to do here is we want to go to the details panel and we want to make this a little bit bigger. And we want to select our widget and then we want to set it to our main menu widget. So hit this little drop down and say main menu widget. And then we also want to change the size of it because you remember we set the size in here to 200 by 300. So we want to make sure that we use the same size so that it looks the same on the screen as it does here. So we'll say, what was it? 200 by 300. So under the draw size, we will say 200 by 300. And I think it might be backwards. Yes, it's backwards. So in order to fix that, we just need to come in here to our widget or our menu 3D blueprint. And on the widget, make sure you have the widget selected. We just want to rotate this 180 degrees like so. And if we compile and save and come back here to our scene, you can see now it is set up correctly. So the cool thing about this is you can actually move the widget independently of like where the camera is and everything. So if you select just the widget over here, you can move it and you can see the origin of the actor stays the same spot, but the widget moves separately. So we can just come over here and kind of position this wherever we want. So I'm going to try to make it look like it's kind of hanging from this sign a little bit, just to give it a nice artistic look. And it's a little bit crooked, so I'm going to turn off my rotation snap just so I can get it perfect. And something like that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's the idea. And you'll see it just says text block, text block, text block. That's fine because it doesn't actually assign those values until the game runs, so it's going to look a little bit different when you're not running, but when you actually run it, it'll look correct. Okay, so that's our first one, and that looks like it's pretty good. So I'm going to file save all again. And the first thing we need to do here is we need to set it so that when we start the game, we start at this camera, or we at least transition to this camera. Because you can see if I press play right now, we're still just kind of flying around here in the middle of nowhere, and we don't even have a mouse, so it's not great. So to do that, we can do it inside of the level blueprint. So we'll open up the open level blueprint right here. And let me open it up on my other monitor as well. 1 second. Okay. So inside of the begin play, we want to do a couple things. The first thing we want to do is we want to set the input mode to be game and UI only, and we want to show the cursor. So I'm going to delete this event tick, so we don't need it. So we can say right click, get player controller, and then we can say set input mode, game and UI. And then we also want to, I'm just going to copy this again, and we also want to say set show mouse cursor. All right, so that will show the mouse cursor and allow us to actually click on things, but we want to transition to that camera. So in order to do that, we need to call a function here off of our BP menu 3D widget, and specifically this one, because this is the one we want to start at. So if we just select this, like I've just done, and then we go back to our level blueprint, you can actually right click, and you'll see right here, there'll be an option to create a reference to whatever the thing is that you have selected. So we want to create a reference to the sky, and it will do that like so. So now we have a reference to it. And so we basically want to tell the game to use this camera. So I'm actually going to write a function in here that does that, and then we'll call it from right here. So we'll come back to here in a second. But first, let's go back to our BP menu 3D and then go to the event graph. And again, I'm going to delete these bottom two because we're not going to actually need them. And then we're going to have a custom event here. So we'll say add custom event. And we will call this transition to. And so what this is going to do is whenever it gets called, it's going to transition the camera to, whatever widget this is inside of. So whenever we transition to a widget, we want to move the camera there, obviously, but we also want to disable collision for whatever widget we were previously on and enable collision for the new widget. Because if you think about it, like when we're running, I'm going to run my other one real quick. Maybe I won't because it's not letting me. Okay, maybe I won't. But when you're running the project and you have a widget in front of you, so say you're on the main menu widget, say you're looking at this one, you don't want to be able to click on another widget that's over here. You want it to be disabled, and you want only this one to be accepting input. So to do that, we will say set actor collision enabled, and we will set this to false. So this is for ourselves, and then this needs to take in the new widget that we want to transition to. So if we select this and add an input, it will be of type BP underscore menu 3D. We can call this the new menu. So this is the one that we're transitioning to. So we want to drag off of this and say set actor enable collision. And for this one, we want to set it to true. So whichever one we're transitioning to, we want to be able to have collision so that we can click on it. I'm just going to double click. We're just double clicking on this line to add some reroute nodes to kind of clean it up a little bit. And then finally, after that, we actually want to move the camera to use that camera. So we can say get player controller, and we want to say set view target with blend, and this will transition the camera for us. And the new view target is going to be this new actor, this new widget actor that we want to go to. And for the blend time, you can kind of set this to whatever you want. This is basically how long it blends between the cameras, and then like how it blends, so like linear, cubic. I'm going to use this one so it eases in and out nicely. And then we also want to set the blend, I think this is exponent, but you can kind of play with these numbers and see what they do. But for now, this is really all we need to do to get it to work. And so let's see here. So let's come back to our demonstration, no, our demonstration level blueprint, and we will just say transition to. So this is a little weird use case right here because we actually want to pass this in for both of the parameters because it's actually um, the target and the transition to menu. We'll be using this event in other places as well, and it'll like make a little bit more sense because we won't be using it in such a weird way. But this works just fine because they're basically just telling it to transition to, this one. So now if we run this, you can see our camera spawns at our player start that we added, and then it smoothly transitions over to our widget. But you can see there's a couple problems. So first of all, whenever we click, it steals our mouse, and it also, we can't actually click on things. So I think the reason for that is if we come back here to our BP menu widget, we need to select our widget, and we need to select receive hardware input, and this will allow it to receive mouse clicks. And so now if we press play and we have our mouse, you can see now we can move our mouse around and we can click on things. It does get hidden sometimes. I think that's because we might need to select, where did we set the game mode? So back in the level blueprint, we might need to uncheck this because we don't want the mouse cursor to be hidden. So let me just compile and save and try this again. All right, so it's still getting hidden. Let me figure out why. Oh, right, because we need to select, I forgot to select this. We want to set this to true because we want to actually show the mouse cursor. So now if we try this again, so if we click and click, the mouse stays there, and we can click on all these buttons, but of course they don't do anything yet, but at least we can click them. So that's the next thing we need to do is make it so that when we click the buttons, things actually kind of happen. So let's first of all set up the rest of our little widgets here. So I'm going to hold down Alt and drag, and that will make a copy of it. And then I'm going to move this guy over here. I think this is where I had the options. Just kind of get it in the general right spot. Something like this. And then I think for this one, I kind of took the camera and I moved it, kind of rotated it at an angle like that. Again, feel free to, do this however you want. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. But the important part here is you want to select the size that you want your widget to be. So we need to switch this over to options menu. So switch it to options widget. And then, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. Let's leave it as main menu widget just so we can actually see it first. And then we'll switch it later. So figure out the draw size that you want. So I'll just say like 400 by 200, because you can make them all different sizes. Like they don't all have to be the same size. So maybe we'll go with something like this for the options. And then we need to kind of straighten this out a little bit. So let me select the widget again and kind of straighten it out. There we go, something like that. And then now that we have that, we need to go and make our other one. So again, I'm just going to Alt drag this guy. And I think I had the credits somewhere like up here. So just let me move this around. Something like this. I kind of had it like attached to this little support thing here. And then, oh gosh, what did I do? Oh, I alt dragged the widget. Okay, we don't want to do that because I accidentally added a separate widget to that widget. So delete that. So make sure you have the actual actor selected, and then we want the alt drag. That didn't work either. Alt drag. Why is this not working? Oh, because I have this scenery. Okay, sorry, I'm like joking here. So alt drag with the actual actor selected. There we go. Okay, now it created a full copy of it, which is what I meant to do the first 7 times. And then we will put this up here. And I'm just going to kind of throw this in because I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. And just kind of move the camera over here, something like that. And then again, I'm going to change the size of this one to be like something more fitting. So maybe like 600. That's too big. 400. by 400, like that. And then we'll just kind of scoot this over a little bit. So it's inside of this brace thing. Okay, and we'll just pretend like this is correct. Okay, so close enough. All right, so now that we have our three things in place, let's actually name them so they're named something meaningful. So let's select this guy, and then up here, let's name it to um, main menu. And then this one we will name options menu. And then this one we will name credits menu. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is make it so that we can, well, I guess we should probably create the options menu and the credits menu real quick. So let's go to widgets and then open up the credits menu. And then inside of here, let's just add something real simple. So let's delete this canvas panel because we want to have a border. And then for the color of the border, I'm actually going to copy the same color we used over here in our main menu. So let me select this border, and then I'm just going to say copy to copy that color. And then we will just paste it here. Oops, we can't paste it there. We need to paste it here, I think. Paste, there we go. And then it's important that you set this up here to custom, and then you set it to be the same size that you set it to in the world. So for the credits, what did we do for the credits? So the credits is set to 400 by 400. So we want to also set this to 400 by 400, just so we can have an idea of what it looks like. And then I'm just going to add some really simple text here. So we'll add a canvas panel. And then on the canvas panel, we'll add some text. And we will set the text to be top, middle, anchored. And then we need to set this to 0, size to content, and then 0.5 on the X. And then maybe add a little bit to the top so it's not touching the top. So something like that. And then for the color, we want to use that brown color. So I'm just going to go back to my, where was it? My main menu widget. And then let's just copy the color of, we can just copy this color, this hover color, because that's close enough. Copy that guy. And then under the color and opacity, we can paste. That didn't work. Paste. Why is that not working? Copy. This is the right color, right? Yeah. And paste. Okay, so I guess it doesn't want me to do that. Another way to do this is if you come over here and you click on it, you can actually drag it up to the top here and it will save it. So let's just do that. And then we'll come back here and we will select it. Although I don't want the alpha to be 0.5, I want it to be 1. So that's, there's no alpha to it. And so that looks like that. And then we will just call this the credits. And then we want to add our back button. So we'll add a button. And again, use the button widget because that's the one that we created that already kind of works for us. And we want to drag that onto the canvas panel. And we will add for the text, we'll just say back. And then we want it to size to content. And then we want to anchor it to the bottom middle. And then we just need to zero out these guys and set the alignment to 0.5 and 1. And then that looks pretty good. And so now we can come back here to our level and we can select the widget and we can change this one to be our credits widget. And there we go. And again, this will say text block down here because the button is like dynamic. So it's not going to show up as back whenever you're looking at it in the level. But once you start the game, it will be fine. And then let's also just do the options menu just to fill that one out. So let's open up, or first of all, let's take a look at what size it was real quick. So this guy is 600 by 200. So let's open up the options widget, set it to custom, set it to 600 by 200. And then we can go ahead and fill this out as well. So on the left here, again, let's just add a quick little border. And then for the color, I'm just going to take this color as well. Where is this border? I'm just going to open this up and drag this guy up here as well, just to save it, and then press OK. And so for the border, we want to select this guy for the color. And then we want to add text. Oh, we need to add our canvas panel first. Oops. Canvas panel. And then for our text, add that onto the canvas panel, set it to top middle, and then zero it out. Size to content, 0.5 alignment. We'll add 10 to the Y again. And then we will call it options. And then for the color, we will select our dark brown color. And again, we need to set this to 1. And then we will add our back button. Oops, our button. So we'll drop our button onto our canvas panel. Oops, that's the wrong button. We want our button widget. Drop it on, and then we'll say back, size to content, anchor it to the bottom middle, zero these guys out, and then alignment, we want 0.5 and 1. Okay. And so the only thing we need to do now to finish the options is come back out here, select the widget, and switch it to options widget. Okay, so now we have, I'm going to save everything real quick. So now we have all of our widgets done, and they're all in the correct space. So now the only thing we need to do is make it so that we transition between them. We already have some of the code for that, so it's going to be pretty straightforward. So in order to do that, we basically need to tell this widget or this actor here that it links to both this actor and this actor up here, right? Because it can go to either one of them. So in order to do that, we will go to our, we will go inside of here. So let's open up this blueprint for editing. And then on the left here, we want to add a variable, and we will call this linked, oops, linked menus. So these are all the menus that it links to. And so we want to change this to a BP underscore menu 3D. And we want to change it to an array. And then we want to set it to instance editable, blueprint read only, and private. And when we do that, and we come back here to our world and we select it, you'll see we can see linked menus over here. And so we want to link it to the options and the credits. So I'm going to hit this twice. And then in this dropdown, I'm going to hit options for 0 and credits for 1. And the reason I'm doing that is because options shows up first because we have play game, and then we have options, and we have credits, and we have exit, right? So we're going to have options and then credits in that order because the order here does actually matter. And then for this one, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to only add 1 because this one only links back to the main menu, right? Because we can only go back to the main menu. So I'm going to select main menu. And then for this one, I'm going to select it. And this one also only goes back to the main menu. So if you have more in your game, you can set them up this way. And they just need to have references to whichever ones they link to. And then inside the blueprints, we can handle switching between them. So just make sure you have all of the references set up. All right, so once we have that set up, I guess let's go into our widgets and handle the clicking of them because the clicking of them is going to require this information. So let's go to our main menu widget first of all, because we'll do this one first. So in the graph, we want to override some events here for when we click the buttons. So I think we can just delete all of these because we don't actually need these. And then close that. And then on the left here, we have our buttons. So the play game button, if we click on it, we can hit this little on clicked event. And the reason this is here is because of the event dispatcher we made inside of our button. If you go back to our button, you see this on clicked. That's what's showing over here. And if you remember, this gets clicked whenever the button gets clicked, or this gets dispatched whenever the button gets clicked. So if we hit this, this event will run whenever the play button is clicked. So when that happens, we're just going to say open level, and we can just open whatever level we want. So I'm just going to open the first person template level. Let me go find what it's called here. All right, so I'm just going to copy this name. And you can open whatever level you want, but I'm just going to open this one. So that's basically that. Okay, so the options button, that's the next one. So we'll click on that and hit the plus button. So for this one, we want to use that base event dispatcher that we created at the beginning where we transition to linked maps. So if I right click and say transition right here, call transition to linked menu. Oh, and we forgot to add a parameter. So actually delete this real quick. We need to modify it. So back here in the, I think we closed it. So go back to the, where is this? 3D menu widgets. We want to open up the 3D menu widget, which again is that base class. And then on the graph tab, we want to select this event dispatcher, and we want to add an input parameter of type integer, and we will call this the menu index because it needs to be able to specify which menu it wants to switch to. And so let's compile and save that. And then back here now in our main menu, we can call that. So again, we'll say call transition to linked menu, and then it takes in the menu index. And so this menu index needs to correspond with whatever you have set up inside of this array. So you can see our menus, 0 is the options and 1 is the credits. So when they select options, we want to transition to index 0 because that's the options menu. So we will just leave this at 0. But when they select the credits button, so we'll add that. We want to do the same thing, except we want to pass in 1, like so. And then when they select exit, we just want to call quit game. And then for the player, we can just say get player controller. And there we go. So let's just run this and make sure everything is working. Actually, I don't think it will because we didn't hook something up, but I'll just show you that real quick. So if we hit play, come on. All right, so we smoothly transition. If we hit options or credits, nothing happens, which again, I know why. We just need to hook one more thing up. Exit should exit, which it does. And play game should launch us into our first person game, which it does. Okay, so the reason this isn't working is because all we're doing is we're dispatching this event, but nobody's actually bound to this event. Like nobody's actually listening to this event, which is why nothing is happening. So I forget actually where I do this. Let me double check. All right, so yes, so in the BP menu 3D, we need to come back here and we need to bind to it in the begin play. So we can drag in our widget because that's the thing that has the event dispatcher that we care about. And we need to say get user widget object, and that gets the actual widget from it. And then we need to cast it to our specific one. So we'll say cast to menu 3D widget. And then from here, we can just say, if you drag out this, you can say assign transition to linked menu, like so. You might have to type bind, or no, it doesn't show. Yeah, bind event, like bind and assign do the same thing. One of them just creates the event for you. And sometimes assign doesn't show up. I'm not sure why. I think it might be a bug, but if it doesn't show up, you can just find bind. So we'll just use bind, I guess. And so what this is doing is it's basically allowing you to bind an event for when this gets called. And remember, this gets called whenever the button's pressed. So if we drag off this, we can say add custom event, and that will create an event with the matching signature. And so we'll just call this something like on transition between menus, something like that. And then it's passing to us the index of which one it wants us to switch to. So all we need to do now is we need to call a transition to with the appropriate menu based on this index. So to do that, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that this index is a valid index. So we can drag in our list of menus and we can say is valid index. And if it is, so we'll do a branch. So if it is, then we basically just want to call transition to on the menu at that index. So I'm just going to scoot this over. And then we will copy this guy and say get a copy. And the index is going to be this index that's being passed in. So we will do that. And then we will call our transition to. So let's just drag in transition to. And we will hook that up like so. And there we go. All right, so let's give this a try now. And things should probably work, unless I messed something up. So let's press play. All right, so we smoothly transition in, and then we press options, and we go over here to options, and then we can hit back. Oh, we don't actually go back. Oh, right, because we didn't actually hook up the buttons yet. So we need to do that as well. So in the options widget, we need to go to the graph, and we can delete all this stuff. We don't actually need it. And the button, we want to say on clicked. And of course, when it's clicked, we want to call our transition to linked menu, and we want to just pass in 0 because remember, 0, like it's the only index in the array. If you click on this guy, it only has one index, 0, which is the main menu. So we just want to say 0 there. And then we also need to do the same thing for the credits. So go to the credits, the graph, delete this stuff, and then say on clicked. And then we'll just say call transition and 0, and there we go. So you should see how easy it is to just like hook up more buttons and transition between menus. It's super simple. So now we can say options, and it will bring us here. And now when we press back, you'll see it brings us back to the main menu. And then credits will bring us up to the credits page. Back will bring us back. And there we go. So it's all working. So I did actually forget one thing. I'm just editing this in at the end of the video. I actually forgot one little tiny thing. So you notice when you press play, you can actually hit this back button over here, which we don't want. And that's just because we forgot to set the collision to disabled by default. So to fix that, we just need to go to the BP menu 3D. And then right here in begin play, after we do this binding, we just want to say set actor enabled collision, and we want to leave it as false. And now make sure that all the widgets are disabled by default. So now if we press play, you can see I can still select these guys, but now this one's disabled. So yeah, continue back where we left off now in the other video. Just to kind of give you guys an overview of the whole system again, just in case you're still a little bit confused. Like, so if you wanted to add a new menu, like literally all you do is you just, copy one of these guys, and then you put it wherever you want, and then you change the widget to be whatever widget you want, and then you go to the details panel, and you select this guy, and then you say whichever menus it's linked to. So if you want it to go back to the main menu, then you just add main menu here. If you want it to go somewhere else, and you can add as many links as you want. And so the only caveat thing is you got to make sure that inside of the widget that you have here, that 0 transitions to the same, like they have to correlate. So the 0 inside of the details panel has to correlate with the 0 inside of the widget, just like we have set up for the main menu. So yeah, so that's basically it. If you guys enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. I also have a Patreon if you guys want to support me there. It's always super appreciated. And I also have a Discord that's just filled with a bunch of game dev people, basically. It's in all that information's in the description of this video. So feel free to check it out. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks.